Welcome to Crossroads. Violence is on the rise in the United States, but with this uptick, well, many news outlets are claiming that something else is going on. They're saying the violence is coming from the right. But investigations show that this narrative is based on, well, false data. And I'm going to show you all the data today. Also, something strange happened in New York City. There were reports of a massive network of servers and SIM cards, and these could have allegedly been used to bring down the entire New York City cell system and other things also. We talked about these topics a lot more today. Let's make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and share today's episode. But first off, let's talk about far left violence and how it's on the rise in the United States. Look, this includes the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk, mass shootings at Christian churches and schools and targeting everybody, and also the new designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization. And Trump saying he's going to take it even further, by the way. But with this uptick in violence, many news outlets so far have been framing an opposite narrative. They claim that most of the violence is coming from the right. It's not far left violence. It's all on the right-hand side of the political spectrum. Is that true? Well, investigations actually reveal how they frame that narrative. And it turns out a lot of news outlets are using falsified data to say this. Let me explain. Let me show you the Federalist. They had a really good breakdown on this, going over the sources of these claims. And it says this. It says, after Charlie Kirk was assassinated last week, conservatives noted that most political violence comes from the left. The left bristles at this fact and has responded by dramatically padding the numbers to pretend the reverse is true. It's conservatives who are to blame for everything. And notes that consider a September 12th piece from The Economist claiming, quote, extremists on both left and right commit violence, although more incidents appear to come from right-leaning attackers. A big problem is how they define right-leaning attackers. I'll get into that in a bit, because some of the attacks they framed as right-wing are absolutely not right-wing. It's like a transsexual guy who had some really weird ideologies and things like that. Or, for example, it's like a satanic group that might have used like a Nazi symbol one time, but they're like far-left Satanists. At like groups like the Order of the Nine Angels, for example, that has been tied to some incidents. Things like that. That's typically how they've been framing these things. Mislabeling by the media, and then the continuation of the mislabeling to frame the narratives. Back to the piece, so it says this. It says right up front, the piece admits, talking about The Economist claiming this whole narrative, they say the piece admits it used data, quote, largely compiled by researchers whom skeptical conservatives would probably dismiss as biased. So who are these, let's say, these individuals who conservatives may be skeptical of and believe might be biased? Well, it says this. It says, yes, readers should be beyond skeptical of the source in that piece, the Prosecution Project. They say its website claims to track and provide analysis of felony criminal cases involving illegal political violence, terrorism, and extremism occurring in the United States since 1990. It says the founder and executive director of the Prosecution Project is Michael Leodenthal. And it notes that although the links naming the website's leadership were broken Friday, someone took it down, meaning no names were visible. It says Google had not yet scrubbed Leodenthal's name and from searches. It notes that Leodenthal is an openly anarchistic Antifa-affiliated researcher at the University of Cincinnati who, by his own admission, is a far-left violent extremist. The Federalist reported in 2023, and that's their quote on that, right? Further, it states this. It says the Prosecution Project even includes the posting of racist stickers in its tracker, as if that's comparable to terrorism or violence. So on one side you have, hey, a guy assassinated Charlie Kirk. On the other hand, you have a guy saying, hey, someone posted a sticker that some people believed was racist. So you put a sticker somewhere and someone says that's racist. What is the sticker? Is it a MAGA sticker? Is it a White Lives Matter sticker? Is that racist? I don't know. But they were saying that posting a sticker is representative of terrorism or violence in terms of the way they count their stats. That's one of the things they were doing to make these numbers. It adds this further in. It says most crimes involving race or abortion businesses are blamed on the right in the data, with nothing to back up those claims. So if the target is like a BIPOC, right, somebody of a different race who's not white, or if it's targeting an abortion business, right, they say that automatically that's somehow related to right-wing violence. That's one of the ways they frame the narrative, basically. It notes further in, similarly, a bias study by Alex Norwista at the Cato Institute was debunked this week by Amber Duke of the Daily Caller. It notes that Norwista claims politically motivated violence is rare in the U.S., but that when it happens, quote, right-wing terrorists are more often to blame than the left. That is, it notes this, when you exclude the terrorists who killed 2,977 victims on September 11th, 2001, and exclude injuries, property damage, and people who were not killed. Thus, the criteria excludes the 2 assassination attempts on President Donald Trump, for example, because not a successful attempt of violence. It notes further in that additionally, Duke found that some of the crimes that Norwista blamed on the right were at best questionable and at worst downright wrong. So, look, really the problem here in terms of these data sets and what everybody's looking at is, how do you define violence? Is hate speech violence? Is offensive speech violence? How do you define hate speech? Is a sticker of somebody posting something on the right considered hate speech? By virtue of that, is somebody posting a sticker representing a left-wing viewpoint also considered hate speech? Or is it only viewed as hate speech on one side? And if that's the case, is that even violence? But how do they count that and not this? In other words, they write off half the entire political spectrum and then redefine violence as something that's not violence in order to make these stats. Also, there's a big question over how they label people as right-wing, because oftentimes they label people as right-wing who most people would not consider to be right-wing. Look, even many people on the left who have carried out attacks have been falsely labeled by the media as being on the right. One of the biggest examples recently, the guy who allegedly killed Charlie Kirk. The media framed him as being a MAGA supporter. In fact, again, Jimmy Kimmel was deplatformed very briefly for saying he was a MAGA supporter. The media has repeatedly done that. When you have major incidents of violence, they say that was a conservative. All the data might suggest otherwise, but they still say it. Then the organizations document it and frame the narratives of right-wing violence on the rise. That's how this happens. Also, there's things like the trans school shooters, groups like the Order of the Nine Angels, which I talked about before. The Order of the Nine Angels is a left-hand path satanic group. And I'm not saying that by calling names. They're actually a satanic group. But they're considered left-hand path by their own definition. What does that mean? It means that they believe in inverting social norms. If society is against, if they're against White Lives Matter, they're going to promote Black Lives Matter. If they're against Nazism, they're going to put a swastika somewhere. They believe in doing things that go against the prevailing narratives, but they're a left-hand path satanic group, meaning they're by the older, ancient definition, left-wing. In fact, the origin of left-wing comes from left-hand path. Even major organizations that were even endorsed by many media and groups in recent years that advocate for violence, groups like Antifa, they tend to not even count them in the stats. Because if Antifa goes out and they're protesting in front of an ICE facility or throwing rocks at police vehicles, unless somebody gets arrested, unless somebody gets charged, unless somebody goes to jail for it, they don't count it. And so what happens then if only one side is getting arrested for protesting? Only one side is getting arrested for demonstrating. Only one side is getting accused of raiding buildings and criticizing and attacking people. And the other side gets off completely scot-free almost every time. How do you count those stats? That is the problem with these numbers, right? Because look, another big problem, they tend to get away with many of the crimes they commit on the left. Over the years, many of them. How many people were arrested and charged over the BLM riots, the looting, the burning down of buildings? How many people went to jail over that? More officers were injured in those riots several times over than January 6th. And if you compare that also to January 6th, where everybody was arrested just about, at least went for the building, everybody was framed, even if their crimes were like trespassing or picketing, literally carrying a sign. And remember the major crimes for that, which was the crime for Enron, a financial crime, which was disrupting an official proceeding, was actually dropped by the Supreme Court because they overinterpreted how to use it. Many of these organizations still count all of those people in these stats. And that one stat basically overturns the entire narrative. That is how they've been framing these narratives. I'll raise a question also. If a crime is committed, is it only considered a crime if it gets prosecuted? Is a crime still a crime if it's not prosecuted? What about if you prosecute innocent people? Do you still count that as a crime? Everybody's innocent. They're, again, let off the hook. Are they still criminals? Is that then counted in the crime stats? That is the problem how the media has been framing all of this. Because, again, they're jimmying up the numbers, skewing it, writing off half the narrative, and then using a, let's say, unweighted scale to make the entire narrative they want. That's how this whole thing has been happening. Also, something strange happened in New York City. Something very weird. You might have seen the reports on it. There was a massive network of servers and SIM cards, and these were allegedly being used by some weird organization for various types of targeted attacks. There are some allegations it was for like scam calls. There are some allegations this is part of a broader criminal network, even tied in with foreign powers, and it could have potentially even been used to bring down New York City's entire cell system. Breitbart said this. It says the Secret Service has uncovered a vast network of over 100,000 SIM cards and 300 servers in the New York area believed to be used by foreign nation-state threat actors and criminals for swatting calls targeting prominent conservatives, including Marjorie Taylor Greene. It notes the amount of hardware seized in the bust could be used to hamper cell service in New York City. It notes the Secret Service has uncovered a massive network of more than 100,000 SIM cards, 300 servers located within a 35-mile radius of New York City. The operation believed to be run by a foreign nation-state threat actors, meaning tied in with a foreign government, not just from a foreign country, and criminals, was uncovered during an investigation into a surge of swatting calls targeting high-ranking government officials, including members of Congress and the Trump administration. So what are swatting calls? It's where somebody makes a call to law enforcement and says, hey, there's a hostage situation at such and such address. When there's a hostage situation or something along those lines, what happens? Well, the police have to send the SWAT unit, these special weapons teams. They oftentimes invade the building, guns drawn, ready to fight somebody because, again, it's an armed suspect call, and you can kill someone. If somebody believes their home is being invaded, because when you're swatted, they oftentimes invade the home without warning. Somebody believes their home is being invaded, they arm themselves. It can turn violent very easy, and somebody can get killed. There are organizations that do this, targeting prominent figures. Conservatives often are the main targets of this. Many conservative influencers are regularly swatted. Many of them are reported this, in fact. And also there are groups apparently doing this to public officials. The fact that a foreign nation-state threat actor working with criminal organizations has been doing this is very big, because they could potentially use this as a way to assassinate American politicians and American political figures. This can be used as a form of assassination. Because again, one wrong move, somebody gets killed. That's all you need to do. The fact they took this network down could be very big. They still don't have a lot of details on it, still coming out. But let me show you this. The U.S. Secret Service actually had a release on it, and this is important. Secret Service would not normally be involved in a case like this. Secret Service, they're more in charge of defending, U.S. politicians, president of the United States, his family, and so on. FBI would normally handle like a raid like this, or even local police. The Secret Service being involved does suggest that this network they took down was targeting major American politicians, key political figures. They said this in a post, quote, "The U.S. Secret Service dismantled a network of electronic devices located throughout the New York tri-state area that were used to conduct multiple telecommunications-related threats directed towards senior U.S. government officials, which represented an imminent threat to the agency's protective operations." It says these devices were concentrated within 35 miles of the global meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, now underway, it says, in New York City. It notes that given the timing, location, and potential for significant disruptions to New York telecommunications posed by these devices, the agency moved quickly to disrupt this network. In other words, suggesting that while the United Nations is holding its general meetings in New York City, that this network may have been used to target key political figures for some use. Whether that may have been swatting them, again, calling in to have the SWAT team, Special Weapons Task Force, go in, guns drawn, could have led to assassinations by accident, or using other means, was a direct threat to key political figures. On the note of the United Nations General Assembly, President Donald Trump is also calling for the arrest of whoever shut down, it seems, the escalator as soon as him and his wife set foot on it. Some very strange things happened during the UN General Assembly. President Donald Trump goes there, steps on the escalator shuts down. The question is, did somebody shut it down maliciously, or was it just an error? You might write it off as one incident. Then Trump is giving his speech. The teleprompters go down while he's giving his speech. Was that an error? Did anybody else experience errors like this? Is that unusual? Yes, it is. Was it intentional? We don't know. Maybe. Trump seems to believe it was intentional. The two of these incidents combined, he believes, suggest that somebody was maliciously manipulating the electronics at the UN General Assembly against him. Was Trump a target of this foreign state actor threat group that was using swatting attacks and other things targeting American politicians? We don't know either. Something else at the UN General Assembly, they also denied access to the Epoch Times. We were not allowed to go there. And we have reason to believe the Chinese Communist Party was pulling strings to deny access to us, preventing us from covering it. Something strange is going on at the United Nations. What it is, maybe we'll find out. That said, thank you so much as always, and thank you so much for being here. If you haven't yet, please don't forget the like button, hit the like button, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much. That said, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.